But what I really like is when we sit down and talk about safety, there are never any barriers. So whether it's the CEO of West Fraser or Canfor or any other company sitting around that table, we all say that when it comes to safety, no barriers, we share ideas and we push each other as well. And a lot of that, I think, is because of the drive that Rob has instituted in this organization. So Rob, please come on up.
And I just want to correct Nick there. I'm the only one in the room without a AAA personality, okay? So thank you for attending the conference today. This is the fourth Interior Safety Conference, and I think as a result of all being packed into this room, you're getting the sense that this is the highest attendance that we've had, which is the case. We've got, I think we had 175 that were registered today. So thank you very much as far as making this conference a success. I'm going to share a couple of observations and perspectives in my role as far as CEO of the council, and hopefully you can take some of that, and throughout today's speakers, take in some of that. And really, similar to Nick, my challenge to you is, as you get back to your work site, think how you're going to apply this information. You know, and I'm going to start with a bit of a historical perspective on our industry. And if you look back in I think what we consider to be the glory days, 70s, 80s of this industry, I think we often forget about what sort of fatalities that we were experiencing. You know, at that time, 70 or 80 fatalities a year was not unusual. So if you were to start at this side of the room and take that to about here, every year in this industry, that's what we were seeing as far as work-related deaths. And I think that is important to remember because we've come a long way, but we still have a way to go. So, I mean, I'll look at that and I'll say over 2016, 2017, from a fatality perspective, what we were seeing is we experienced 10 fatalities in 2016 and 10 in 2017. We're starting to see some different trends as far as what we're seeing for fatalities and injuries, where when we look at this particular industry as far as activities, falling by far has been the most prevalent as far as injury rates and fatalities. And just to give you some idea as far as what that looks like in 2016, on the injury rate side for falling, 27.3, which means that 27.3 out of every 100 fallers is injured. Staggering number on that front. Good work being done, but we still have a long way to go. On the fatality side, we're seeing a bit of a different emerging trend, where 50% of the fatalities over 2016 and 2017 were to log truck drivers. Now, that is something different that we've seen, and it's an area of concern. And as far as my perspective on that, it's this industry's highest risk. And it's the highest risk as far as workers, it's the highest risk as far as social license, and it's one of those areas that we need to get a handle on to take it to the next level as far as injury and fatality reduction. So a lot of the things that we talk about today, you're going to hear about fatigue. Fatigue, I would say, is something that we as an industry are starting to tackle. It's not an easy one. It's a very difficult one. But the fact that as industry we're starting to look at this is good. And you're going to hear from one of the speakers today on that. The other side of it is, on the behavior front, is we as leaders, and I'm going to say we all have a role to play in this room as leaders, and it doesn't matter what your role is in the company, you have the ability to impact how people behave at the work site. And as leaders in the room, that's by setting the example. As co-workers, that's by setting the example as far as what that looks like. And I'm going to bring it down to one of the basics as far as when you look at the reasons why people are still getting injured and why people are still getting killed. So when I talk about some of these log hauling fatalities, and we also had one fatality where an individual was ejected from their pickup truck on the way to work, some of these involve not wearing seatbelts. And you know, when we talk about something as basic as seatbelts, one has to ask themselves, the law requires it, company rules require it, so why are we still seeing this? And I would say, just the simple act of putting on a seatbelt would have probably saved about 5 lives over the last 2 years. So apply what you're going to hear today as far as even a basic rule as a seatbelt. I think it's very difficult when people are put in that situation as human nature to say to somebody, I'm concerned, I'd like you to wear your seatbelt in the pickup truck today, because it's not only for you, it's for me also. And in my role, we get to work with a coroner quite a bit. And there was one file that stuck out with me as far as something as basic as seatbelts, where there were 4 people in a vehicle. One person was not wearing their seatbelt. And that vehicle was in a motor vehicle accident, single motor vehicle accident, rolled a number of times. Nobody survived. The reason nobody survived is that one person who was also moving around the cab during that collision. So on that front, something as basic as that, when we take it to the behavior end, we can make a big difference, and then we can just start moving up the chain from there as far as reducing fatalities and injuries. So you're going to hear from Corey today, and Corey is a speaker that I've heard a number of times. Point that I wanted to highlight here, as far as we can have the best systems in place to protect us, and one of the risks of having those systems in place is to not be self-aware as far as not over-relying on those systems to ensure that we're okay. And I think we're setting up good systems to allow that. A lot of our vehicles have all the bells and whistles to allow that to happen. And we can't let ourselves lull into a situation where we are so comfortable with those systems that we have too high a level of confidence in that technology. So that's something else that I just wanted to highlight today as far as a takeaway. So thank you very much for attending, and I'll hand it back to Nick. Thank you.